Okay then guys, so we're going to have a look at the Uptown Funk video and break it apart as close to frame by frame as we can, although this video uses a lot of repetitive shots and so I'm not going to go through those ones that we've already analysed before. Okay, so we start off with an establishing shot of the video. Now this accentuates the legs of an unknown female. We've got red heels here, which are often associated with sexuality, and so we can tell straight away that whoever she is obviously sexualized and objectified. And so immediately, right at the very beginning of this video, we are seeing Male Gaze Theory by Laura Mulvey, and we're positioned in the sort of viewpoint of a heterosexual male. Now the transitions that we see throughout the video are mostly cuts, so we've got a sort of stark jump from one aspect to another, and so in between this woman walking we've got cuts of, again, unknown males shaking hands suggesting a greeting or some sort of deal. Now as we start to see the woman, again the camera is panning up her body, so again reinforcing these ideas of sexuality. We then get a shot of Bruno Mars. He's seen alongside other members of his band who are called the Hooligans. His dress codes connote sort of the 60s Motown movement or the 70s funk movement through the colours that are used, also the style of suit and also the hat he wears as well. Now we've got indirect gaze through the use of the glasses, so this could also create a sense of enigma, but it's also, I don't know, I find it difficult. It's direct in the sense that he is looking towards the camera, but because we can't see his eyes, because he's got these glasses on, it does create this sense of enigma and it stops us from connecting with him. Either way, he appears serious and formal. Now the next shot we have of the woman suggests that she's wearing very little or even no clothing underneath her coat. Again, highly sexualizing her, highly objectifying her, particularly given that we have not seen her face yet. Okay. Now in comparison to the woman, the men are dressed very formally, and we also see that they're dressed very similarly. So this could suggest a sort of uniform, as well as the fact that they seem to be part of the same group because they're wearing the same thing. Now using selective focus we start to get an idea of the location, but the female is still the focus of the video here and is becoming more and more revealing. When we next see Bruno Mars, he looks more engaged, more enigmatic, he's more active, but also appears to be showing off his wealth, particularly through the rings that he's wearing. His jacket stands out compared to the other men because of its colour, so this signifies from the get-go that he is the boss of this group. Now the final shot we have of this woman is of her chest. Now her chest sits on crash points within the frame, making it the focus, so again heavily sexualizes her, particularly as we've said because we don't ever get to see her face, so she doesn't really have an identity. Now Bruno Mars can be seen in front of a pawn shop. The neon lights also relate to the 70s culture being used within the video. And although we get to see part of the woman's face here, it still doesn't really give us any identity or give her any identity. What it does suggest is that she's looking towards those Uptown Funk posters in the background. Now this acts as a form of self-advertising, but it also anchors the video as well. And when we see the Hooligans together, they are standing in front of a jeweller's. Again, we've got that gold emphasised not only in terms of its colour, but also suggesting their wealth and status. When the woman passes by, we get indirect gaze, but it suggests that Bruno Mars is an iconic figure, that he is very attractive, that he's a sort of a draw not only through the way that he looks, but also his status as well. And as she moves along, we reveal Mark Ronson as well. Now it's interesting because Mark Ronson is the main artist, but so far he's not been given as much airtime as Bruno Mars. Now their gaze is clearly focused on the woman who has passed by, signifying their desire for her, before we get a cut to Ronson, who begins the track as a whole. Now in comparison to a lot of the other images that we've seen already, we've got a lot of low-key lighting in the shot of Ronson on the right hand side. This puts him in shadow and it makes us wonder what's going on, so we've got a lot of enigma raised right at the beginning. Now, as the track starts fully, Mars uses more of a direct mode of address. He's in the centre of the group to show how important he is, and he also has more screen time, as we've mentioned before. Now, we get a lot of cutting between shots, so we've gone from the group sort of walking towards the camera to where they're leaning in towards a small camera that's placed on the floor, and the camera itself appears to be using what's called a fisheye lens to create this rounded look on the video as a whole. Now, by leaning in, it suggests that they're letting us in to some kind of secret, because it's almost like they're leaning towards the demographic. As the group walk by, though, in the other shots that we can see, we have more women moving in front of them, walking by them. Again, we don't see their faces, so they have no identity, which clearly indicates objectification and sexualized through the use of the dress codes that they wear. But the colours and patterns that we see, again, are very reminiscent of those the 70s and the sorts of musical movements in that period. Now, the dancing at this point in the video appears very laid back and relaxed, but it could also again imply a certain level of sexuality, because a lot of the men are dancing from their hips. And in certain cuts, Mark Ronson appears as well, so that symbolises that he's a minor part of the group, but he does also have some recognition within this track as a whole. Now, the dancing gives members of the demographic something to follow. This is a way of them getting involved within the video by copying what they see on screen, and it could be one of the reasons why they choose to watch the video. But as the hooligans and Bruno Mars dance on screen, we have the camera tilting to give this sort of distorted view. Mars is often featured as the central focus within a lot of these dancing shots, which again references the level of focus that he has before the effect is added in the right hand side, which makes the camera seem like it's spinning 360 degrees, creating a blurred and very distorted view for the demographic. And that's used then to change scene, because now we've got Bruno Mars and the hooligans who are lined up along the sidewalk. In the background, again, we can see cover art for the single. We can also see posters as well, which again act as a form of self-advertisement. And the men themselves are giving indirect mode of address, so we create enigma. We do have elements where their actions match the lyrics, so we can see here where it says stop, we can see them all holding their hands out, and this is a very common convention of music videos, and we have an extreme close-up to show what's going on, and it also brings a stop to the music and the video as a whole. When we come back to them, the camera has shifted now so that it's in front of the group rather than to the side, and we see that they've got props such as their glasses, and they're also checking their watches before we move to the next scene, which features the limo as mentioned in the lyrics. Now, the camera at this point tracks the movement of the limo, and you can sort of imagine that as they were filming this, the camera would have been moving backwards and going around the corner as the guys and the limo follow. Mark Ronson is featured sitting on top of the bonnet of the limo, so it gives him additional status, but the whole thing has these sort of connotations of a parade. Now, the next time we see Bruno Mars and Mark Ronson together, they're sharing the frame, and selective focus puts Mars in the foreground and Ronson in the background, again indicating that he is the bigger focus. When the camera zooms out, we see that the men are featured at a shoe shine, again showing their formal status and dress codes, but also providing an element of binary opposition. Mars is more upbeat and active compared to Mark Ronson, whose focus sitting down. We also have two men who are shining the shoes are white. Now, this is unusual in terms of that cultural representation, because it portrays Mars as a higher class and the white men as a lower class. This subverts the context that would have been around in the 70s, and also sort of subverts the context of America as a whole, given that America still has a lot of issues with race. Further subversion is seen through Mark Ronson and Mars in the salon, which is normally associated with the female gender, and we can see that we have a woman on the left, but this time it's utilised by the men. So this could indicate their level of attractiveness, but also provides a sense of metrosexual males in the sense that they're concerned with their appearance. Now again, Ronson takes on the role of the businessman, has connotations of working behind the scenes, just as he does in this track as a whole, and he doesn't give direct address to the audience. He's also not as active as Bruno Mars, who again is featured as the main person within this track. Now, it's interesting that the only face of the woman that we see within this video appears to be this woman here. Now she's unfazed by what's happening, and she's also not as stereotypically beautiful as the women that we've seen walk by previously, which might be one of the reasons why we actually get to see her face. Either way, the camera is panning along the three of them as they're in the salon. So we've had this woman, and then we move to Bruno Mars, who again appears very concerned over his appearance, which we would associate with being in the 21st century. And we finally have Mark Ronson, who appears very, very stern. He's nodding his head to the beat of the track, which could be contagious, and it also shows how infectious this beat and this music is, because it encourages the audience to do the same. We then have the camera sort of flick, or we have another cut scene towards the shoe shine where Bruno Mars is switching his feet to the beat of the music, which is being tapped out by Ronson. Now at this point the focus is on the beat of the music here because there's nothing else going on in the background track. We then cut to the parade with the limousine again, where more men are featured, and this time they're given more focus within the frame. So this suggests that the group has been added to by further musicians and friends. Linking to this historical context, the track, the majority of the musicians on the track are black, which again represents the roots of this funk and Motown movement. There also appears to be a shift in the track in terms of the clothing, because we start to see people of different class. We've got the addition of the man in a sort of sports jacket here, but again Bruno Mars is also shown at the centre, even though he's sharing the frame with the rest of the sort of group and the rest of the band. Now we then have a new scene that we have a new scene here that we cut to, which is actually kind of similar to the rap scene in Black and White by Michael Jackson. We've got men sitting on the steps playing cards, which has the connotation of business deals and gambling. We've also got a more relaxed tone because Ronson has taken his jacket off, and the only member of the group who is dancing is from the Hooligans rather than Bruno Mars. We start to move towards the end of the video here, and we see the final scene that's set outside has got both Mars and Ronson featured, indicating their shared status on the track as a whole. And from here we go into the club, which we saw at the very beginning of the video, so we're starting to get this sort of circular narrative here. Now at the club, the individual members of the Hooligans are given airtime, probably because they're featuring in terms of the music now as well. The background has got neon lights, so that's part of the historical context, and they also provide colour and lighting within the scene, which is very, very dark. Low-key lighting, as we've just said, is really sort of hard to see the members of the band, but it's making it again seem more intimate. It makes it seem more mysterious, particularly when we get Mars silhouetted against the background lights. It also has connotations here to other musicians such as Michael Jackson, who used it in a technique on tour, and we end the track where it began, with Ronson sort of shouting as the camera flickers and pans around him. Some of you eagle-eyed viewers out there are obviously going to comment on the fact that my final shot is from the beginning of the video rather than the end, but as this is happening in the end of the video, you get little sort of subscribe and the next video buttons popping up. So this is the only clean image I could get of this. So you're just going to have to trust me that that happens at the end of the video. Hopefully this was useful to you guys. I know that I rattled on really quickly through that, but I have put all of the key terms that I've used here at the end of the video so that you guys can use these within your own work, go through it, highlight them, see where you're using them already, and maybe pick one or two to use in your next piece of work. If you want to ask me any questions about this video, please pop a comment in the comment section below, or get in touch with me through Twitter at media_revision. And if you subscribe and hit the bell icon next to it, you get instant notifications every time I post a new video. And I will see you guys later for another video.